I learned a lot about running when I did this challenge in 2022 and 2023 called No Rest November, Sudden Death December. And I'm laughing because it was probably the craziest thing I've ever done. And I've done quite a few different challenges. But the way this challenge worked is I did it with a bunch of friends. And in November, you run a 10K every day. So No Rest November, 6.2 miles every single day. You miss a day, you're out of the challenge. Then from there, we move on to Sudden Death December. And Sudden Death December is interesting because every day in December, you add 1 kilometer on to the previous day. So on December 1st, we were running 11K. December 2nd, we were running 12K, 13K, 14K. And you continue all the way up until there's 1 person left. And so in this challenge, I had a 100-mile race in the middle of December. I obviously did No Rest November, and so I had to recover from the 100-miler and run. I think it was something like a half marathon the next day. And in this challenge, we just kept going day by day until there's 1 person left. And no one had ever at this time made it to January, because someone would always win at that point. And me and 2 other people made it to January, and we were joking, calling it Jobless January because of how much time it took to run. And so I made it into January, and I made it up to 51K. So, 32 miles, 31 miles. And I actually pulled out of the event because I was in Cancun. And so I was spending a lot of my time running when it was supposed to be vacation. And so I dropped out, and obviously at this point was very beat up. And potentially, I think I was injured. I had a shin issue that it took me a while to take care of. Now, the thing is with this event is it's overtraining, right? It wasn't necessarily this specific, I don't know. I don't know if I'm sure I got fitness, but it wasn't like I was using this to train for something specifically. This wasn't my race. This was my challenge. And so Patrick Oborn was the guy who took first. And he's an amazing runner. He actually just won this event again this year, because when I participated, it was a couple years ago. And throughout this event, I learned a lot about staying healthy, because it seems insane to run 40K and then run 41K the next day, and 42K and 43K. At that point, we're pushing past marathons every day, and we're doing them in a row. I think I did about maybe 4 or 5 50Ks in a row, because once I got close to the 50K mark on the day I was supposed to run 49K, I went to 50K because I wanted to have a streak of 31 miles every day. The point of all of this is to explain, it was a huge, intensive effort, physically and of course mentally. I can't even begin to explain what I learned mentally. I learned 3 really important things, or really just reaffirmed how important these 3 things are when it comes to staying healthy as a runner. And I want to go through these because it might be something that's valuable for you to implement. I think if you're not doing any of these, just pick one and figure out how it works in your routine. The first thing that was pretty obvious is having a really, really good running form. And this might look slightly different for everyone because our biomechanics are different, the length of our legs are different, though there are some general things that I stand by that are really important when it comes to a healthy form. First off, you don't need to sway your arms back and forth. That's not great form. And I see this a lot with runners is they, instead of this kind of side motion with their arms, they're crossing their arm. It's just twisting motion. And when you think about this, if you're moving forward and you're running forward, why do you need any energy going out to your side? It's inefficient, and I think it takes more energy from you when your arms are just crossing, right? I'm moving forward, so I want to be trying to move everything forward or distributing energy that's going to help me take me through my next steps. And then the other thing, just to keep it simple, is landing in the middle of your foot or towards the front of your foot. I think a lot of people have a heel strike, which is where as you land, your heel is pressing into the ground. And so again, it's almost like sending you're trying to move forward and the energy gets sent back up into your shin and leg. And I think this is a big reason for injuries, or maybe just people not running as fast as they could. Because if you could be efficient, you would land towards the front of your foot, and so then when you spring off, you're carrying that momentum forward instead of like shooting it right up your leg again. And these are two simple things that can be fixed right away, and you have to be super conscious. So when I'm running, 26 miles, 27 miles, 28 miles, all the way up to that 32-mile run, it was really important for me to stay focused on my form, because I'm out there taking tens of thousands of steps every day. And if I'm taking steps that are more likely to cause injury, well, I'm just expediting that process. It was especially hard towards the end of the run every day to keep good form, because your muscles get fatigued and mentally you get a little, drained, and so you may not be as focused. But even if you're not doing a crazy event like this, if all you do is have good form, you're going to be preventing a lot of that injury. There's other elements to this, but I think this is fundamental. If you're running wrong, you're going to hurt yourself. If I was squatting, doing barbell squats, and my knees were all turned in, or maybe the weight wasn't fully stacked on top of me and it was like rounding my back, of course I'm going to get injured. So you have to have good form with running, and this was essential for me staying healthy throughout this. The second thing, which every runner knows, but a lot of runners say I don't get it in. The second thing that keeps you injury-free is stretching, and this is completely obvious. I think everyone understands this. For some reason, a lot of runners don't do this. When you're running, your muscles are contracting and extending, your calves are continuing to squeeze, your quads are driving, all your muscles, even in your upper body. If you're running like this all day for a 6-hour run, you're tightening up your back, your traps, your shoulders. Stretching, especially right after the run, and this is a key distinction I'm going to make. When you're stretching, you're taking those contracted muscles, those tight muscles, and you're opening them up. And I think a big cause for injury, and I'm going to put injury with quotation marks, is because the muscles are so tight they're pulling on things. It only makes sense. If my quad is tight and I'm running and it's continuing to try and contract and squeeze because of the effort, of course my knee is going to feel like it's being pulled in a direction. It might even feel like a sharp pain. And so getting these muscles that were once contracted or were contracting during a run and getting them back to maybe a more open space is going to make a difference with injury. And of course you can stretch throughout the week. You could run in the morning and stretch in the afternoon. I do a lot of yoga, so I'm all for that. The key point I want to make is stretching right after the run, so then your muscles aren't tight throughout the whole day or continue to become tighter. So when I do stretching, I have like a 7-10 minute routine I do after every run. That's all it takes. Like, I would rather people run one less mile and get the stretching in because of how good it is for your body and how it keep you away from injuries. If you get injured, you can't run, or you can't run as well as you'd like, or you can't train as hard as you would like to. So if you take 1 mile off every day, or just make the time, but you take 1 mile off of your run every day and spend 7 to 10 minutes stretching, I think it makes all the difference. There's a lot of different types of stretching you can do, but the obvious ones are, stretch out your quads, your calves, your hamstrings, your hips. You could do some upper body stuff. I do a lot of upper body stuff during my yoga, and so I focus on my legs or lower body after a run. Just stretching after a run, when your muscles are the warmest, but they're the tightest, or maybe not the tightest, but they're going to continue to get tight throughout the day, that makes a huge difference. And I don't know if I even really care what stretches you do, but if you stretch right after your run, when you're warm, and you can kind of get those muscles to stay open throughout the day, that's going to make a huge difference when it comes to staying healthy and just feeling better and recovering faster, which is also great. So stretching, I would say that's like one of the most bang for your buck if you're trying to stay injury free. Stretch right after your run for 5 minutes. It really doesn't take that much time. The third thing and the last thing I'm going to talk about is strength training. This is another thing runners know they should do and maybe skip out on, especially as you start to get into ultra distance. I think strength training is essential. I think even 5K runners could use some strength training, because if you're demanding a lot from your muscles, they should be strong enough to handle it. I think one of the excuses runners make, is that they don't want to get too bulky. And I get that, especially if you're running a 5K, 10K, half marathon. Those shorter distances, if you're light, you're going to run faster. And I get that. There's different types of workouts when it comes to strength training, and that could be focused on hypertrophy or making your muscles bigger or growing muscles or putting on that extra muscle weight, or just strength training. And I do a mixture of both, but the strength training is what I'm looking for, where you're just making sure your muscles are strong. And there's a variety of stuff out there. Another comparison or another thing I talk to runners about is I would rather you cut your mileage down in the week by 5-10 miles and get 1, 2, maybe 3 strength training sessions in. Again, that's going to make the difference. A lot of the times our ego gets in the way and it's like, I want 60 miles this week, 70 miles a week, 80 miles this week. And I'm all for pushing our limits and running as much as we can. If you're not getting your strength training in, you're potentially, I think, more likely to get injured. And so put the ego aside, run a little less, or just make the time, but run a little less and get strength training in. There's plenty of workouts on there. Or if you go to the link in the description, I have a running community, the Running Elite, where I have courses and modules talking about different types of strength training. So you could go there if you want some support with that. But strength training is essential if you want to stay healthy. Just keep the joints strong, the tendons, the muscles, of course. So these are 3 things that I think if you just picked one and started implementing, or implemented all of them over time, you are definitely going to stay injury-free. I hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail sometime soon.